Hi, friends. I'm sitting here with Molly Reisman. Molly, welcome. Nice to meet you.
Thank you so much. Nice to meet you as well. Hello.
So, tell me about yourself. You're an actor. You're a writer. You are a producer. You wear many hats.
Yes.
How did that come about?
I've just always sort of, been drawn in a lot of directions. I think at the base of things, I just love um storytelling, and I love when it's done well and done in a way that I haven't experienced before.
Hmm.
Um, I started out, I think it all started with playing piano. And from there, I sort of got into acting and singing. And from there, I got into writing. And from writing, I got into producing. And it's all sort of just like piled on top of each other in terms of just kind of like following the thing I have the most questions about.
Right.
Um, and I feel really lucky to have gotten to sort of, wear so many hats. It's exhausting. And there's that whole, jack of all trades, master of whatever. But I'm having a good time at the moment. And yeah, I feel really lucky to be able to do so many things.
Well, I think that's what's important, that you're enjoying what you do, regardless of what role you're in. And sometimes you're probably in multiple roles in a given project as well, right?
Yes, which is
Um, Go
its
ahead.
own bag of worms.
So thank you for sharing that. So remind me, are you a Toronto based person as well?
Right now, I'm based in Brooklyn,
Yeah.
but I was born in Toronto. I grew up in Ottawa, went to school in Toronto at, it's now
CMU.
called Toronto Metropolitan University. And I went to NYU in 2016, and I've been based in Brooklyn since.
Oh, nice. Congrats.
Thank
So
you.
you've been pretty busy. I kind of wanted to know if you were Toronto based because the film that we're going to be talking about, Retrograde, um, is based in Toronto. So it does have a bit of that vibe about it. So I kind of wanted to get myself oriented on how well you knew the city and its energy.
Oh, yes. I mean, so most of it was filmed a block away from where my mom's house is in
Oh,
Toronto. So I'm very familiar with the area. I love it very much.
nice. Okay, so tell me about Retrograde. It was written and directed by Adrian Murray, and it's about to open in theaters here and I guess Canada wide as well. Um, so congratulations because it's a really interesting film. It premiered at Slamdance. It has gotten really great reviews. But what was it about that character who happens to be named Molly that that attracted you first? And was there a scene or were there lines that sort of said, okay, this is something I really want to be part of?
Sure. Thank you so much. I'm so excited that we're opening in theaters. It's crazy. Um, that's a great question. Honestly, I think to me, the first thing that drew me to it was, I mean, I've had the pleasure of working with Adrian. This is the third movie that I've worked on with Adrian. And he just has a really clear point of view,
Mhm.
um, and has a very specific writing style that is extremely unapologetic and like unself-conscious in like the story he's trying to tell. And I have so much respect for that. And for me, when I read it, Adrian and I had talked, and he said, "I want to make a movie, and I think I want you to be this lead person. It's going to be about something about a car." And that's pretty much all I knew going in. And when I read it, I kind of I got a lot of Larry David vibes, which I
Mhm.
love personally. I'm a big Curb Your Enthusiasm fan. Um, so I thought it read as a comedy pretty clearly to me,
Right.
um, which is kind of funny. There's a lot of different views on if this movie's a comedy or not.
Mhm.
But for me, it read very clearly as a comedy, um, and I loved it. I thought
Mhm.
it was such an interesting pace, the way it was set out, and it was just so clear and like rooted in naturalism, but also kind of insane in how all of these mundane situations sort of escalate or not. So yeah, there's a whole slew of things that I loved about it when I first read it.
Well, that's great because a lot translated back to from the page and your discussions with Adrian. Um, so maybe for folks who haven't really seen the film, just a setup is that, Molly has receives a ticket, a traffic ticket. She's not happy about that, and things kind of spiral from there. Is that kind of a fair, quick summary?
That is absolutely a fair summary.
Okay, so we're gonna leave it at that. I think you nailed it for me in that the film could be seen in different ways, right? In the sense that, there's humor in it, and I totally get the Curb Your Enthusiasm vibes, 100%. There's a part of me that is also irritated by Molly, and that says a lot about your portrayal of that character. So congratulations. In the sense that it's a character that I think we've all come across at some point in our lives. So how did you go about knowing that you had that very clear path set in the script in terms of what what made Molly for you?
Sure. This has been such a funny experience for me because I love this movie. I'm so proud of it. But a lot of the people I talk to in it, they come up to me and they're like, I hated you so much in that movie. I just hated everything about you, which has been a journey for me to sort of figure out how to handle. But I think it all comes from when we were filming before every scene, and the scenes are the way Adrian wrote them, they're pretty long, they're pretty theatrical. And before we get into it, Adrian and I would have a conversation and we would sort of talk about all the reasons why Molly was in the right in her search for justice. And we were sort of able in our private conversations to frame it in a very, very clear and justified perspective of a hero's journey, really. And I think that's so much of what is interesting about the movie is that because of the way Adrian's the cinematography, the way it's shot, the way that there is absolutely no music at all, it's just, you're really a fly on the wall and you get to make up, you get to decide for yourself how you feel about this situation, which is, I think it puts a lot of trust in both the performances, and also it gives a lot of freedom to the audience, which I think is pretty neat for Adrian to do.
Yeah, thank you for mentioning about the music because yes, there's no score or soundtrack. But what I actually appreciated about, even though there were long takes, were also the camera setup in that it allows us to see Molly as the central figure, right? I mean, it really is about her and her truth, and the rest of the characters are sort of there to complement or not,
right?
The way, her view of the world. What was the dialogue between you and your colleagues in terms of the scenes that you were having, especially with your roommates? There was a lot of different moods in that apartment. So how did you kind of collaborate in those scenes?
We had the script and then we'd run through it and block it. We'd play with it a few times. And Adrian was always really open to, if Sophia and Bessie and I sort of started moving in a different direction, we could play with it and, it would be pretty small modulations, but Adrian was really open to sort of seeing how the relationship developed organically, which I think let us sort of explore how different facets of the tension in this household in a very sort of, I feel like nobody was self-conscious to try a new thing.
Right.
While we were shooting.
So there was some room for improvisations.
Yeah.
Okay, so that is nice because it's very natural. I know that the film comes across as a slice of life, in terms of Molly's life. And to some folks, it might be like, why do I want to see a few days in the life of this person, right? But, it's very relatable in the interactions that you have with your friends. I have my favorite scenes in the film. Can you share a couple of yours, perhaps, that you really enjoyed working on?
Yeah, absolutely. I really love the party scene. It's like, I think, right It's like one of the last scenes. Um,
Mhm.
and it just felt kind of like a different, um, it felt like the character of Molly Richmond was able to sort of unlock something that the whole movie is sort of like hidden away, and it felt like a really cathartic moment. And in
Mhm.
terms of acting, it was just so much fun to be able to sort of sit in the energy of that room and
Mhm.
keep, motoring forward in trying to get what I want from the scene. Um, so
Mhm.
for me, it was just for me it felt like the highest stakes moment, um, which I loved. And I also really loved any scene where Adrian has a cat called Augie, and we were filming around Adrian's house. So every now and then Augie would come into a shot. And there's one where I'm like, computering on a bed, and
Yeah.
Augie decided to grace us with his presence, and he steals the scene, and I'm obsessed with it.
Yes. I thought it was a another cast member, but I see that you were in Augie's territory after all.
It's Augie's world. We're all just living in it.
So thank you for sharing those. Definitely the party one is one of my favorites as well. In terms of, it's almost like, oh, it's coming. Everything is gonna come out here.
Yeah.
So I hope folks can kind of, realize where it's going in terms of when you're basically sitting with Molly in the car from the beginning, and then you're kind of going along with her for that rest of the ride, so to speak.
Yeah.
I noticed a couple of notes on the film from different folks online, and you know, there's some descriptions about Molly in terms of calling her a neurotic young woman or an entitled person, or those kinds of descriptors. But there's more to Molly than just being a neurotic person. Um, how would you respond to some of those sort of descriptions of that?
Yeah, I think to me, Molly's journey is very much about trying to find a sense of agency in her life that I think she feels really untethered,
Mhm.
um, and sort of lost and unseen. And I think this moment is a moment of deciding to stand up for yourself and say, this is a hill that I want to die on. And screw you if you don't agree with me, because I agree with me. And I think that's extremely valid. And I sometimes people ask me like, what would you do in this situation? And like, what's the difference between you and your character? And I think that like Molly Richmond, people say she's neurotic and entitled and stuff, but she's got confidence, she's got a real sense of self that I just, I'm not cool enough for, not cool enough. I don't have that kind of drive in me. I haven't been pushed that far.
Right.
Um, so I really do think it is a matter of perspective, and I do think that it's you know there's a reason why people react the way they do to certain situations, and I think it's sort of a study in what how you respond to that last thing that breaks the camel's back.
For sure. And it could be a mundane thing like a traffic ticket, right? So we never really know how any one person will react.
Yeah.
So thank you for that feedback. I also kind of want to point out that Molly is in her 20s, right? And I think I'm no longer in my 20s. So, I can only think back of what I was like then and what would have kind of drove me nuts then, in
Yeah.
quotation. So I think there's something to be said for where Molly's at in her life. She's still kind of a young adult and, like you said, trying to figure herself out. So I think depending on where we are in our lives, that's how we react to Molly too, right?
Yeah, I agree.
On.
Yeah, I sort of, I am also no longer in my 20s, but I still have a muscle memory of living with roommates, and how big those things can feel, especially when you're sort of trying to grab onto anything to find out who, like, where you should be going in life and who you should be and all this stuff. And the things that you can control, you just sort of, like, for better or worse, you know, explode in whatever ways. And I thought that was fun to play with in this movie.
Yeah, I think so too. And I'm curious to see what other folks have to say about the film as well. I kind of also want to point out the length of the film, and kudos to the editor, Marcus Sullivan, here, in that, there's so much. The film is not 90 minutes long. It's a little bit less than that. And we actually go on a whole ride, again, pun intended, with this film. What was it like for you to see the final cut of the film?
You know, completely different from what I had anticipated. Like, as I said, I went into it feeling that it was such like a clear comedy.
Right.
And we did have the luxury of we did a lot of takes for all of the scenes. So we got to play with it a lot of different ways. So, the structure was always the same. The events were always the same. But it was not what I expected at all. And I do think that's, a real testament to Marcus and his vision, and also how well Marcus and Adrian collaborate, and how they can sort of, communicate effectively to be like, this is the story we want to tell, and this is how it's going to look, and let's do it. So I was shocked. I was shocked and amazed by the final product, for sure.
Nice. And what have you heard from audiences? I know you've been at a couple of festivals, and, what are some of your favorite reactions?
I always love when people come up to me and say, I really hated you so much. Oh my gosh. But usually that's followed with like, I hated you so much. I've lived with you, or like, I've been this character, like 3 years ago, that was me, or like I lived with this person, then they moved out 2 months ago and I never heard from them again. So like you were saying, it's so interesting how relatable this story is. And I think it's because Adrian has really narrowed in on a very, very, it's a very clear point of view,
Right.
that people can connect with. And I love it.
Great. Thank you so much, Molly, for sharing about your role in the film. So Retrograde is going to be available across Canada starting May 19th. Where can we see you next, Molly?
Right now I'm working on some writing projects in New York, and I'm doing some producing, but I'm hoping to be doing some acting projects, hopefully with Adrian again, in the very near future. So I'll keep you posted. Follow me on Instagram at Molly Rebec with a K.
Okay, that was going to be my next question. So I'll be sure to put that in the description and people can stay tuned.
Amazing.
Thanks again. Lovely to speak with you.
Thank you so much. It was so lovely to chat.